if you look at the news the last couple of months, rates are rising, Putin's nuking Ukraine, this, that, every news story, and you're like, I don't even want to get out of my bed. And you're like, okay, well, I just called 10 brokers in the hour you were watching the news.
Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right, welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Mastroianni. Today I have with me Mike Taravella. Mike is an asset manager who manages over $81 million in assets. Also started out as a CPA and moved into real estate investing. So we're going to talk to him a bit about that. And also he does a lot of coaching. And, personally, I've met Mike several times, and he's one of the people who is my go-to for questions about underwriting and anything to do with numbers. So he really adds a ton of value, to those who are looking to underwrite deals and to learn a lot about multifamily investing. And I'm really excited to have him on. So thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah, appreciate it, Bob. I'm glad we met down in Jacksonville and talked about your podcast. I'm excited I got the call and excited to riff with you about real estate, health, and everything in between.
Great. So if you can, maybe talk just a little bit about, so I know a little bit about your story. I mean, you fresh out of college, you decided to become a CPA. I guess you studied for the CPA course and exam, which a little bit about my background. I used to work for one of the big six firms. They're not big six any longer, I assume. And I recall people studying for the CPA exam and all the craziness about that. And what took you from there into real estate and sort of where you are today?
Yeah, so I did accounting because all of my family were teachers and worked for Chrysler, and they're like, find the safest route. And they're like, you're really good with numbers, so be an accountant. And I didn't know any better. I knew I wanted to do business. So they're like, hey, accounting, numbers, business. Perfect. And so I did that. And then I worked for I started a screen printing business in college. So that's kind of realized like, oh, I like creating something from nothing. So it's like we found a $900 press on Craigslist, and then started making shirts, and we did 20 grand in sales in 9 months. It helps when you're the upperclassman at a Michigan State, when you know all of the presidents of every org, and they're just like, we will make your shirts, don't worry.
Nice.
And so it was fun, but it just made me realize like, oh, that you can make money without having a job. We didn't make a ton, but it was just like, oh, it clicked. And the business failed because we didn't have processes and systems. So I went into my career as an auditor learning different systems. And it was funny just seeing those bigger companies. You think they're more buttoned up and put together, but they're just as unorganized as you and I trying to figure out our life. So, but just seeing the different systems and the ways to, the imperfections and just how it all worked, I was like, oh, this is cool. But then I worked with Dan Gilbert, who owns Quicken Loans in the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I became like, hey, Mike, I'm investing in this company. You're getting them off the ground. So esports, 100 Thieves was one of my favorite projects, and then a media production company. And I was biz dev, CFO to 12 other tech startups. And so the biggest thing that I see entrepreneurs had was like they didn't have a ton of systems. So I just embodied like, if you just do the system, you won't have to work as hard and you'll know where everything is. But also the biggest thing I saw was I got to see Dan Gilbert like just buy properties in Detroit and make it better. And I realized I'm like, oh, he's making a money from the businesses, not all of them, but he's making money from that on top of real estate. And that's where I had 2 single family houses. I'm raking 27 bags of leads. I'm like, oh, I'm not listening to my own advice. I'm giving startups every day, and I'm raking leads in the fall of Michigan for like 3 hours. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's just has to be a better way. So I took a year off, studied multifamily. I think as any kind of younger person does, they turn to the internet and meet strangers off Bigger Pockets and convince you to go to conferences about apartments. And you do that, and you just networked my face off. Literally was doing the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift to the point where I was going to lose my job in Chicago. and got the call to work with a group here in Knoxville, and then just really became a student. Like I just the willingness to not. I underwrote every single deal for 3 years, whether it was I thought it was good. There was no back of the napkin. It was like I'm underwriting everything because every deal I looked at was a case study in how to operate. And plus, it was the best. Everyone goes, "How do you know your market?" I go, "Well, when you underwrite every deal there, you will know that prices are going up or down. I don't need a CoStar report." So, yeah, and just did that and we've closed over 600 units, 80 million in 3 years. That's thankful to my partners. I own a small percentage, so I'm not one of those influencers just like puff my chest out because we all could buy a REIT and have 10,000 doors tomorrow. So, own a small percentage of those and just, continue to build and scale and have up to 3 virtual team members full time and just looking to expand and grow and do good deals with good people.
So one of the things that you said there, and I, you've said this in conversations that we've had, and I've heard you say this even in the networking setting. You mentioned no back of the napkin, and I love that theory because I think oftentimes, more experienced investors, people who've been doing it for a long time, will often talk about the fact that they can look at a deal and in 30 seconds decide if it's something that fits what they're looking at. And obviously they've put in the hours, they've put in the work, and they've spent the time doing that. But I also think that sometimes newer students, newer people to real estate investing, or potential new investors will just want to jump to that. Okay, teach me the back of the napkin trick, right? Teach me I can spend 30 seconds and see if this deal is right for me. And, you've been doing this for about 3 years. I'm sure at this point there are opportunities that you could look at and say, okay, yes, this makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. But I've heard you several times say like the back of the napkin trick is not for you until you get to a certain point. Right now, underwrite everything. And, I love that theory because I do agree that for many of us, it's like, and I get that urge too, right? Okay, tell me how I could figure out in 30 seconds so I'm not quote unquote wasting my time. But that act of underwriting the deal is sometimes more valuable than even deciding if you're going to send an LOI or not, correct?
Oh yeah. I think it gives you more confidence because you see more deals. Like I just um I look at our industry and a lot of people are really quick to make offers, which is great. But then I see people not willing to call a tax assessor. I go, there's millions of dollars on the line, and you can't call Betty in the property tax assessor's office to confirm your tax number, and you just 2 or 3x the number. Or you can't call comps in the area. Like you're not willing to do the things that I think are necessary when you're looking to buy millions of dollars in real estate. On top of that, you're looking to raise. Like people act out of desperation because it's the 6 seconds of it's like the TikTok of just let me get to the next one. And I go, you don't even know what a good deal is because you're just so new. Let alone how to manage it, who's managing it, what could they be doing differently, what's their rate, what's their admin expenses. Like you're just like going straight. And I'd rather see and I tell my students that I coach through the Jake and Gino community, you're building a 10-year business. It's going to suck and it's going to take a lot of time and you're not going to get there, but it's the hockey stick growth of like, even I've talked to people on Twitter when people are like, oh, brokers answer your calls. I go, yeah, because I call them every 3 weeks for the last 3 years. And people don't want to hear that it takes time.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it takes time to build a business. Like it's not crypto. It's not all these get rich schemes. Like it's not drop shipping. You're buying assets and letting them appreciate and improving efficiencies to grow a business. It takes time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's a little bit of a difficult challenge. I know for me personally, I mean, I've been in real estate investing since 2008, but this has been a transition for me looking for larger multifamily properties. And I could totally understand that, I'm probably about 13 months, 14 months into the process and haven't purchased a property just yet. And I get it. I totally get why people are like, okay, why didn't I take the shortcut? Or someone else did it and I didn't do it. How come, this person found one and I didn't find one, or something like that. And
That happened to
um,
me too. I became the acquisitions guy, and literally the only deal we did that year was a deal that they went through the Jake and Gino website and just like submitted. Like there was a broker who went through there, and it was like I had that FOMO, and I'm like, I can't do this. If I can't even find a deal, how am I supposed to coach other people? So like that goes through your mind, but in those moments, it's so pivotal. If you're ever stuck, just call someone who's more successful than you, and you'll just get recalibrated so quick of just
mhm,
like, oh, great. And so I've embodied that now of like, if I'm stuck or feel like crap for 30 minutes, just call someone who's further along or shoot them a text and do like a gratitude thing, or just be like, let them know, because they'll quickly remind you of just like how capable you really are, and
mhm.
just tap into another gear and just go with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that is one of the things that I really love about the community that we're in. And because there are so many people from so many different backgrounds and always willing to just sort of jump on a call or jump on a text or whatever, and sort of help with those experience type things, because yeah, that's pretty cool. So what are you seeing in the market right now? It's the beginning of 2023. We're sort of fresh off of a market that was flying at the speed of light, and then the brakes came on a little bit. So
Well,
what
it
are you
depends who
seeing
you
now?
ask and whose brakes went off. I think it
That's
was the
true.
buyers.
That's true.
The seller, I think it's interesting. Um, I think a lot of people are talking about just the exposure of bridge debt and the opportunities, and it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. But to be honest, I think what happened last year was just literally it went so hot, and then interest rates have increased the fastest ever in history. And so buyers were like, we can't afford this because our interest rate's 6, 7, 8%. And now the seller's like, we don't care. But I think there's become a meeting of the minds, and that's to the broker's credit, because they've done a lot of legwork in educating sellers.
Mhm.
And I tell all my students and all my people who are looking to join, I call brokers. I don't do anything off market unless a broker is giving it to me, because my highest and best use of time is calling brokers, because brokers have the teams, and they've just been literally, I think people are eager to sell or starting to become eager to sell. But I think interest rates doubling every week for 3-4 months has slowed it down, but now there's a recalibration period. I think interest rates will probably rise again, but like we didn't stop. If you put pencils down last quarter or last year, you were just, now you're in the back of the line of everyone else who did, which are the bigger groups. So because of that, we just got a deal under contract in Denver. We closed 3 deals last 6 months in Denver. Um, Working on some stuff with some brokers. So it's just like we've had a lot of opportunities come our way despite all of those things. And it's just because we didn't stop calling, we didn't stop underwriting. And because of that, you keep submitting offers. And they don't have, and it's not like we're submitting anything different. It's just stuff that hits our criteria. Like that's it. We're just relying on our criteria. This is our buy box. Like it's not a gotcha moment. We're trying to create win-wins for the sellers and us and our investors. So it's just, if you don't stop, nothing change except your interest rate and your loan to value.
So I think the other interesting conversation is that I think, especially people who are either newer to real estate investing or sort of looking at it and saying, I'm thinking about getting in, but I'm not sure. I, you know, Not every market has slowed down at the same pace. Not every market has seen rents level off. And I think the other conversation is, and I actually, after I asked you the last question, I thought you were going to go there. I thought I trapped myself for a second, but the truth is, right, when we say that the brakes came on, well, where? right? Where did the brakes come on? Because in some markets, based on job growth, based on, other things that are happening, demand, rents may still be rising. Cap
Tennessee just started slowing down. And
Yeah.
even then, it's like not real. It's like seasonal, but it's
Hmm.
like we're back. I've seen some comps much higher than ours. And I'm telling my property manager, I'm like, that's the goal. Get there.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting change of events, I guess. But I love your theory of like don't stop, because then that's when you wind up at the back of the line again.
Well, I think too, it's just like if you're staring at news headlines, you're not picking up the phone.
Hmm.
And then you're now that, if you look at the news the last couple of months, rates are rising, Putin's nuking Ukraine, this, that, every news story, and you're like, I don't even want to get out of my bed. And they're like, okay, well, I just called 10 brokers in the hour you're watching the news. So of those 10 deals, I'm talking to 3 brokers. Those 3 brokers are giving me one deal. I'm underwriting those 3 deals. I'm submitting on one of them. So it's like you can't stop ever. Doesn't mean you're winning. It's not like I've won exponentially more deals or I'm competing with Blackstone, but it's just like a fighter. You gotta go to you either finish them or you tap out and you're done. So I think it just keep going in any aspect, right? Weight loss and relationships. Like the moment you stop, it's over.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great segue. I love that. I love that you you did that. So this is the Healthy Investor podcast, and wanted to talk to you a little bit about you and I had a conversation just a month ago about some steps that you wanted to take for your own personal health, and one of the things that I found is that many of the successful people that I interview have some sort of routine or healthy habit or something that they feel contributes. So what are you up to? What's that look like for you right now?
Yeah. So before, when I was leaving my accounting job, I was like 260, went down to 190 because just dialing that in, but kind of just let off the gas. And so now I'm about 6 foot 230. So obviously I'm not getting on any magazine headlines anytime or, anytime soon. There's no centerfold cutouts coming,
I was
but
gonna say possible magazine. It depends on what the topic is.
yeah, the niche. They're like sexy underwriting with Mikey T. Um, but I think right now it's just like waking up and exercising because I am really good at like just working, and it'll be 16 hours of just like working, and then I pick my head up and I'm like, oh, I'm tired and I don't want to work out, which then I'm like, oh, then let's eat like crap. So like I'm getting up and working out. So far so good this year. I invested in an Aura ring. Just because I think another thing too is just like it all funnels. It's always funny. It's like we try to the compound effect. If I exercise, then I go to bed sooner because I'm tired. Then I
Hmm.
go to bed sooner, I wake up earlier, which means I exercise and just like and then because I'm exercising, I don't want to eat like crap. So and it's like eye-opening of how little sleep I used to get, and I'm trying to get more. Like like I would pride myself on getting 5-6 hours for a month and then sleeping for 42 hours in 3-4 days. So it's like trying to be intentional with it, with setting those sleeping habits, but also exercising. And then from there, it's sticking to intermittent fasting because I am really bad at the let's get a treat. Hey, you had a good day. Let's have a treat, even though it's after the 8-hour eating window. So I think kind of, and I've seen it being the new year, a lot of people are talking about words. I think it's intentional, like intentionality is it, because I'm tracking more of my habits. I'm monitoring it, like me being a numbers person. I realized going into this past year that I'm really good at holding others accountable, but the self accountability isn't there, which is the true sign of discipline. So just tracking my habits, watching the scores, seeing the tendencies, and just seeing how I feel. And yeah, just investing more in myself and looking to join a jujitsu gym after I get back from Florida this week.
Wow, excellent. So that's a lot. So interesting, and you
You
mentioned
can
like
tell. nothing to everything. And even
That's
reading Atomic Habits, I go, just 1% better. You don't need 100% every day.
and that's so true. That's so true. And I think that's oftentimes what causes the burnout, right? So it's like people go from never going to the gym to I'm going to go 7 days a week. And then, 11, 12 days in, they're just like, this is just too much.
Like
So
everything hurts. I don't feel good. What the hell is wrong with me? And then it's just like, I mean, I'm 31 now. So it's like that vicious cycle of like playing sports growing up, being active all the time. And then you're like, all right, sit at a desk for 14 to 16 hours a day in public accounting. And you're like, oh, I eat, sleep, I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a desk and I don't move. It's like, if I don't move, it's just a vicious cycle of bad habits that I'm learning to adapt and doing like phone call meetings and just on the treadmill and just trying to move more. It's
yeah.
very it's very
But
basic.
it's something you often hear from entrepreneurs, right? And you said it yourself, like you're willing to work 14, 15, 16 hours a day, possibly on your business and grind and grind and grind. But like you have to take that hour for yourself or that half hour for yourself. And that's going to allow you to do more of the other side. So it's not like you don't have the ability to work hard, right? It's not like you don't have the ability to like hold yourself accountable to something, right? If you set yourself a goal that you're going to call 10 brokers today, I'm very confident that you would call those 10 brokers, right? So now it's just about, okay, I said I'm going to go to the gym, or I said I'm going to go to this jujitsu class, or I said I'm going to, get out there on the treadmill or something. So good for you. I'll tell you, I think from 25, 26 to almost 40 were probably my unhealthiest years. I was around 40 when I sort of gave myself a little knock in the head and said, like, you got to do something. So you're ahead of it. You're definitely ahead of the curve on that. One of the questions I wanted to, intermittent fasting. So, what does your schedule normally look like? Do you do like a 16-8 intermittent fast, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm doing 16-8 just to get that consistency because I just know I eat at noon is the goal. I usually trying to get a little bit hangry at 11.
Mhm.
But 12 to 8 is usually that eating window I try to do. The hard part is just like I get that second win because I have 3 virtual team members in the Philippines. So I have huddles with them at 4 Central, 5 Central. So I'm usually done at 6. But then what happened was at like 6:30, I get a second wind of like, it'd be a great idea if I just worked for another 2, 3 hours. Now that I took a break at like 5.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, why don't I do all of this right now? And then it's 11 o'clock. I'm like, let me have a treat, which then affects the sleep, but then miss the workout. And so, but yeah, trying to do like a 16-8. I've heard other people do 6, but I figured we'll start with 16-8 and then we'll adjust from there.
Yeah, I'm sort of, holidays, took a couple weeks off from intermittent fasting, and I'm back on it again. And generally speaking, I do a 16-8, which means for those who are listening, that means for 16 hours you don't eat any calories, and then for 8 hours, that's when you're eating your food and having your calorie intake. Couple little tips that I find work for me. Well, first of all, we eat we eat dinner pretty early in my house. I'm Eastern Standard Time. We eat dinner around 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I'm done eating by 5 o'clock every day, which I know to some people sounds like crazy, but then to me, that means that I can eat at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So 9 o'clock tomorrow morning doesn't feel like as much of a stretch. I think for a lot of people, that stretch of from when you wake up until you can first eat seems to be where people kind of struggle a bit. I think that, you mentioned getting hangry and all that. So a couple quick tips I can give you, and maybe it helps other people too.
Yeah.
One is that I find that in the morning, I for years now, I've been drinking coffee black. So that counts as something that you can have in intermittent fasting as long as you don't put cream and sugar in it. So I feel like that sort of quells the hunger a little bit in the morning. I'll have a coffee. But in the evening, I used to crave sweet in the evening, some sort of like ice cream or some sort of snack. And I guess about 2 years ago, I sort of stumbled upon herbal teas, and that's my evening trick. I'll have there's a couple of them that I kind of like the
Like a
flavor of them.
peppermint.
Spearmint's a good one. Um,
Okay.
I there's one called Throat Coat that I really like. It's got like a black licorice flavor. That one's pretty good, and it's also good if you're having a sore throat. But I just, again, they don't have, there's no calories and there's no caffeine. So then that's not because they always say you can have as much water, tea, and coffee as you want. Well, you start adding caffeine in at 9, 10 o'clock at night, or 8, 9 o'clock at night. I know for me, I'll be up all night. So that's been a good trick for me, is that I have some sort of herbal tea in the evening if I'm sort of feeling like I want something else, and it holds me over until bedtime, and it knocks off that urge to grab something sweet. So
Yeah, the holidays made me realize that I think when everyone should be we eat all the time on top of I don't think I ever saw anyone drink water for 5 days I was home. How does I'm like, if you just drank water, I think everyone would feel way better.
that's also an excellent tip.
It's like, oh, you want to drink and then eat, and then we'll eat sweets, and then we'll go to bed, and we'll have breakfast. And I'm like, where's the water?
That is very, very true. That's something even for my daughter I try to instill. Like, she'll be like, "Oh, I'm not, I have a scratchy throat. Did you have any water today?" you know?
Yeah, I feel like as a kid, it's like I never drank water, and it was fine. And then I'm 30. I'm like, man, I only had 2 cups of water today, which is I'm like, oh, getting old, but it's just I adults, I feel like I don't hardly anyone see drink water.
Do you feel any differently doing intermittent fasting?
I notice I sleep better. So with even my ordering, what happens is, I think is that Andrew Huberman's don't eat 3 hours before bed. So I feel like I sleep better. Um, the mornings I don't feel any hunger usually. It's just I think a mental oh, wake up, eat breakfast. But once you kind of
Mhm.
just get that, change that habit, um, it's fine. But I usually just feel better getting better sleep, because it's just my body's not digesting. It's just zonks out. Um, and I think the biggest thing I've seen is I just feel more disciplined when I stick to it.
Yeah.
It's a battle with you, and I've seen people do 3-day fast. I done a couple 24-hour fasts. On the 25th hour, I'm black out and I forget who I am and just eat. But I'm just oh, this was cool, just going through the discipline of doing it.
Mhm.
So I think nothing substantial, but I think those 2 wins are super helpful in itself.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I feel like I sleep better also, and I feel like there's also a little bit of the mental game, like you said, of it's a reminder to me that I'm doing something disciplinary. And I also feel like I probably, back to your original comment, I probably do drink more water, because it's like I know that's the thing I'm allowed to have, right? I can have as much water as I want. So, and then there's just the positive effects of hydration, and dehydration is something that I think we all sort of struggle with to some extent, right?
That should be the water commercials, just recreate the Snickers and be like, "Do you have any water today?"
All right, we're gonna market that.
Dear water, hear us out.
Cool. So I want to move into the third and final segment. I ask the same final questions of every one of my guests. Um, for you, what is your definition of success? What does that look like for you?
I think for me, it's always when I was in my early 20s, it was a dollar amount. Millionaire, this, that. And then I realized even the wealthy people have the same problems that you have. They're hey, don't have the best relationship with their parents or sibling or this or that. But I think now it's just making impact. And I by no means of I made it, but the past 3 to 6 months, my virtual team members have They made me a 3-minute video on my birthday and were like, thank you so much for being the best boss. Like their entire families made this video, each of them. So it's like 3 different families are wishing me a happy birthday because they love working with me so much. And it's not like I'm paying, hundreds of millions of dollars in salary. It's like being a true, just like leader, creating a, like treating my virtual team members if they were here and making an impact, and they're learning and growing and scaling. And I just want to do that with like more companies. And then the more impact I have those companies, they can impact the world. And that was like the coolest part with like Dan Gilbert's job, is seeing the impact he made in terms of the companies. And so I just want to make sure I'm continuing to do that, because I just like creating the systems and processes and just helping people grow and scale. And the more impact I can have, the more impact I can make on the world. So that's kind of my version of success.
I love that. I love that. Second question. So for someone who's new to investing or even learning to focus on their goals and their path to success, did you have a book recommendation that may be helpful?
Principles by Ray Dalio is probably my favorite book of all time. I've read it 3 times. I just got I'm blurred out, but My Principles, I've been working through that. I don't think you can't read that book slow enough or enough times, because it's just how you want to live your life, how do you want to conduct business, how do you want to do things, and it's just super helpful on anything you want to do. And so I think, I know everyone talks about like Robert Kiyosaki, but like Principles by Ray Dalio gets you thinking differently. And every time I've read it, I've gotten something new out of it.
I love that recommendation. I actually have that book, and it's probably been sitting on my shelf for a good amount of years. And maybe
Have you read it once?
What's that?
Have you read it once?
I did. But
Okay. As long as you did it once,
well, no,
I like
that's
refer
what I
to it
was,
like an encyclopedia now. It's like, okay, this is the scenario. Let's go through and just kind of cheat through it. So
yeah. But I'm wondering if it's a good idea. Maybe a good idea to have a second revisit to it. I know that I read it once and haven't touched it since. So that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Favorite book of all time for sure.
So before we get to the final question, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been fun. Really appreciate you. And I love your openness and honesty about sort of what you're going through. How can we support you, and how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, all my handles are at Value Add Mike, because Bob, I'm sure you can relate. No one can spell our last names correctly the first time. So, and there's infinitely more Mikes in the world. So at Value Add Mike, Facebook, Twitter's probably the best social media platform when it comes to people actually doing whatever you're doing, from VC to crypto, like real estate. I've met more people through there that have been doing really big things and have access. And I feel like a total boomer about it, but I just posted my first TikTok yesterday, trying to get more investors that way. So all the handles are at Value Add Mike. If you have any questions about just investing or anything, you can email me at invest@valueaddmike.com, and we can help you with whatever questions you have, or if you want to check in on the fitness journey. More than happy to help support whatever your goals are in 2023.
Great. So final question, if you could think back to me, and it's not as far for you as it is for me, but to a young Mike, sort of around the ages of 10 to 12 years old, sort of knowing what you've learned so far on your journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give that young Mike or any pre-teenage child to help guide them towards success?
First thing is believe in yourself, because everyone's too insecure about their own issues to think about whatever mess up you thought you had. So believe in yourself entirely and wholeheartedly, because you are successful and can be successful in whatever you want. 2, whatever you want to do, you don't have to wait till a certain age to be that. Like, for example, like you look at the startup Shark Tank, and there's 10-year-olds pitching billion, like Mark Cuban. So if you want to do something, just do it. And if people tell you no, they're not the right people in your circle. And 3, I think just invest in yourself and don't look at the dollar amounts that it costs you. Look at it just how much quicker you'll be. Because I was always hesitant about investing in coaching and this, and I thought it was just it's a free podcast. I can get as much out, and it's just the one-on-one coaching and everything. So I hired a coach last year at the December of 2021. Yeah, 2021. All my years are mixed up. But last year was my biggest growth as a human because of that, and just believing and then just reinsuring and just leveling up. So going from employee to entrepreneur, and now this coming year or this year is developing the CEO frame and just involving in that, so I can just hire good people to work with me and take on the bigger mission that we're trying to take on. So I think those are the three bit of advice for anyone.
I love those. And you actually, I don't even know if you realized it, but you threw a fourth valuable piece of advice in there in passing between 2 and 3 by saying, the people that are telling you can't do it are not the right people to be around. So I love that.
Snuck that one in.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Mike. I really appreciate it. Reach out to him, Value Add Mike. He's always available, and he's looking forward to adding value to you. I appreciate you coming on. And for those of you who are listening, go out there and make it a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor Podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.